let religious freedom remain, but let us have proper mechanisms of how this freedom can actually be exercised, so that we don't go beyond the boundaries. Because, it's normally said, where your freedom ends, someone else begins. So we should not get into into that particular place. But again, on the issues of radicalization, it's a matter of it's actually contextual issues about what are those narratives that are being used. Because one of the things we were using in the radicalization is the counter narratives. The counter narratives means that if there are verses of the Quran, the hadiths that have been abused, so we give the proper explanation of what that terminology means, what that verse means, what this hadith means. That is what the work that we have been able to do.
Thank you, Chairman.
Oh, you want to? Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we're saying is we need to have a self-regulatory system whereby each faith regulates itself. So you have controls and checks, because maybe somebody on the other side may not be acquainted with the doctrines and the creed of the other faith. So if you bring, for example, just as an example, a Christian to regulate Islam, I don't think he will be in a position to know the details of the doctrine and the creed of that religion. So what we're saying is each religion should have their own controls and checks. It should have their own regulatory mechanism and to be given that space to operate on those terms and guidelines. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sheikh. I'll yield the floor to Senator Maina. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the team from SUPKEM, led by your chair. I just have a few issues, maybe observations which you could comment on. First, thank you for sharing your experiences, because you have gone through challenges with the radicalization and what you call profiling, and which we have read about a lot as you spoke to the media and to the public space about your feeling about profiling. I have noted, however, that your response takes a dimension of comparing the Muslim and the Christian and the treatment between the two faiths. And I have noted in page 7 of your response, the D part of it. The D part of it is that, and if Paul Mackenzie should be considered a religious extremist and terrorist, why have all Christians not been collectively condemned and profiled? And why has the crackdown on Christian extremism not been extended to other Christian institutions across the country? In my reading of your response and listening to you, I get the feel that you do not feel it is good for Muslims to be profiled. So your response here appears to be almost saying, can you treat Christians the same way you treat us by profiling? Now, two wrongs don't make a right. What is your comment on that? You are a religious institution. You speak into higher ideals. You don't speak into lowering your ideals. Why have you come through with such a statement? Could you have worded it differently, Chair, because you're a religious body and your goals are higher? That's one. Could you consider that to be, if for instance the Christians were profiled now negatively, or institution, would it make you feel better that now Muslims are being treated like Christians? Would the two wrongs make a right? Would you consider maybe explaining further so that we are clear on what the intention of that statement is? Because this becomes a public record, that's one. And then number two, because of the situation that came through from Shakahola, which was shocking to everybody, to Christians, to Kenyans in general, to Muslims, and people from all faiths, and I'm sure these are the ones that shock even the whole world. I'm looking at your previous experiences with radicalization, and I have seen places which have been shut by security. It's on page, I think it's on page, the ones you have cited in Kwale, yes, page 4, I think. Page 4, paragraph 1. The Masjid Musa in Mombasa, we remember faintly what happened there. There was a lot of commotion when the incidences took place. Would you have shared further experiences on what happened in Darul Ilshad Center, Guluni in Machakos? Because if you give that information to this committee, then we are in a better position to see signs of something like that going to happen or not going to happen, or maybe a small issue being blown out of proportion, or for whatever it is. The Markaz Aisha Hifthal Quran in Uguda, is it Ukunda or Uguda? It's Ukunda, and Markaz Zeina Bobo Kiteje in Kwale. If you shared the experiences there, we would be able to see what could have alarmed the security. And do you consider that it is better when the security forces are overcautious as opposed to us finding ourselves investigating Shakahola? Is it better when security acts in abundance of caution, or when the security takes a laid-back approach and allows members to exercise their freedom of worship undeterred in spite of what is happening? Those are the two that I would request. If you can also supply the details of those incidences, what caused the mosque or madrasa to be shut, then it will be good for this. And then finally, you talked about the Quran, the use of Quran in your faith and Hadith. You said Hadith? Yes. Now, when somebody does not follow the teachings in the Quran and Hadith, what status do they get? What do you call them? Do you call them non-believers, or you say they are not Muslims, or who do they become? At what point do you start to say, this one actually is not in our faith, is hiding under the Quran? At what point do you disown and say, this is not us? It's only holding the book, but it's not the Muslim faith.
Thank you, Senator Maina. I yield the floor to Chairman and your team.
Thank you, Chair. I will respond to the first two questions. The second one of the Quran and Hadith, Sheikh will respond to that. Thank you, Senator Maina, for raising this issue. What we have said it deliberately, because we wanted Kenyans to know that these things have happened. It has happened to us, and we are treated differently. It has happened to Mackenzie, but Mackenzie is being treated separately. Under the same country, with the same laws, but different communities. Why is this happening? So if we want to stand on the higher ground, then unfortunately we'll actually be sweeping things under the carpets. We want these things to come out for the national conversation about how do we treat Kenyans. Madam Chair, one of the things we want to avoid, and that is the reasons why we have to bring these things out. We have to bring, because part of what normally radicalizes Muslim youth in this country is the feeling of being seen as not good Kenyans, not true Kenyans. They are seen as people who are not, they don't belong. So, and when you hear the preachings, how these other people preach, whenever they recruit the young people, they say, you don't belong. And you remember what happened in Beketoni those other days and other things. The messages, the narratives that are coming out from the terrorists when they attacked. What are they saying? And when we do things, when the government do things exactly on what others are saying out there, we fall into the trap. So it is better that we are saying these things ourselves and talking to you so that you can actually find a way of how do we get out of this place. Because it is true, if Mackenzie was a Muslim today, Mackenzie would have not been in court. Let us speak the truth. He could have not been in court. You know where he would have been. Sorry, madam. I'm not, because I'm just saying what had actually been happening. Mackenzie's family would have not been where they are today. And all the relatives and the lawyers and everybody else. In fact, this good lawyer would have also not flown to Mombasa Omari and go and engage on other matters there. He would have not gone there. Because Omari would have had what could have happened to him if that person was a Muslim. Madam, we are just saying, Chair, what we have been going through in this country. And I think it's unfortunate that we are comparing it, but I believe that we are comparing it for good. We actually want to have something good for every one of us. So that next time such a crime happens, we should not be saying, why is this happening and not happening with the other person. That is the only reason why we wanted this thing to come out now, so that it is clear to every one of us. On the institutions that are closed, largely, most of the institutions that were closed, Darul Irshad, in Nguluni, and the other two, these are basically madrasa institutions where they train. The two are girls' institutions in Kwale. And the other one was actually meant to train revertees, people who are embracing Islam. Unfortunately, what we hear is that one person who has ever passed through Darul Rishad was caught in a neighboring country having participated in terror-related activity. One person. So when this person was caught, then the whole institution was closed up to today. And no reason ever given. Nothing. The institution is fully built. There's a lot of facilities. It has just been left like that, and nobody wants to hear Darul Rishad. And I even remember some few years ago, during the time of the late President, President Mwai Kibaki, Muslims, we went there as leaders and we demanded that this institution be opened. In fact, the President promised that it's going to be opened. That's not been opened up to today. So these are some of the issues that we feel that when we see the other day, when the other church was closed temporarily in Mombasa, in those areas of Kilifi, it was opened the following week. And in fact, the preacher was the suspect himself. The person who was arrested. He went back to his church and preached. But here, on our experience, you will not be alive. You will not be known where you are by the time the institution is open. That is why even an electrician was removed from the mosque and taken up to today. Nobody knows where he has gone. That one was not even a preacher. He's just an electrician, and he has found himself in such place. So, and finally, you also remember the incident of Professor Hassan Andwa, who is a lawyer. He represented his client for quite a while. Then when the client was released from committee, and then what happened to Hassan? He was abducted the same day, in the evening, when he went to pray in Jamia Mosque. Not on anything else. He was just a lawyer of the suspect. Nobody knows where the suspect is. So these are the issues which, as a nation, we must find a better way of dealing with crime. If it is a crime, let it be a crime. The way we deal, if it's about using the judicial system, let all of them be used. Let the judicial system be used. If it's extrajudicial killing, I don't want to say it should be used, but yeah.
Chairman, I'm trying to follow your argument. So if it's extrajudicial killing?
I really don't want to say that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Okay. Anyway, these are just triggers of thoughts, so that we think deeper.
Yes.
It's not that we'll be happy when things happen on the other side. What I want to say about the Quran and the Hadith. Hadith are the sayings and practices of Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him. So what we're saying is, of course, there are people who will misinterpret religion for their own gains. A good example will be FGM. This is just an example that, of course, FGM is a cultural issue, and there are spectra of communities who practice FGM irrespective of the religion. But there are certain communities which use religion to try and prove that FGM is for example, is an Islamic right, or it's an Islamic practice. Okay, and there are Muslims everywhere. Muslims in Indonesia, Muslims in Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, they don't practice. But you will get people, in fact, even in Tanariba, yeah, they will try to justify FGM in the name of religion. So this is what we are saying, that you should not misinterpret religion for your own whatever malengo yako mwenyewe. Okay, so religion is something else. You have to prove according to Quran and the Hadith, and it should be not trying to push. Yeah. Thank you.
Chair, there's something I wanted to get your thoughts on. You said that the reaction to radicalism when it was in the face of the Islamic faith, because of what happened in America and so on, it was very heavy reaction. That's what you said, and I appreciate, because we were there. We saw what happened to the state, as opposed to the reaction on Mackenzie and those associated. It was light. I think that's what you're saying. So what I'm trying to get from the senator is trying to inquire, would you prefer heavy-handed reactions, or reactions that let me just say legalistic, in the sense that people are taken to court and they are processed and so on and so on? Or would you prefer, what is more effective? What would be more effective? Or what would be your recommendation? Should we recommend that when we are dealing with religious crimes, we shouldn't treat them as normal, and maybe these people should be denied bail, maybe these people should be placed in detention for maybe 300 days or 400 days? Or what would be, or should there be heavy reaction when we are dealing with what we think are religious crimes? Or should we just treat them like a normal? What's your thinking around that?
Let me begin by saying Kenya is actually a democracy, it's a constitutional democracy, and we gave ourselves how we want to be regulated in the form of laws and other things. Our major concerns as a community is that there should be equality in the eyes of the law. So they should not be, you should not be seen that you are being treated that way and the other one is treated that way. Because, in fact, some 4 days ago, I think it's also important to mention, another Muslim teacher was actually abducted. We don't even know where he is at the moment, from Nairobi here, from Eastlands.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and so even when we are talking about Shakahola, just an abduction the other day on the other side, and I know we are supposed to be actually going to see the DCI after this meeting on the same concerns, because it brings a lot of questions about what is going on. But the community, we have been crying for equality before the law. So if that is guaranteed, we have no problem. We are all Kenyans. We can always through the leadership of those of you in the House and other places, we can also legislate on how we want to be governed, how we want to deal with the crimes of this nature without any problem. The problem is that when we have the laws and then we set aside these laws for this group, but when we want to deal with this group, we remove those laws and we deal with them. That is where the problem comes in. Because when I raise this concern is that, we have the law, we have the security laws. They are there. But why are these laws not being applied when we are dealing with Shakahola and these other people? Why is it that now we are dealing with a normal crime, so the other law is just there? But if a Muslim is arrested today, they'll apply the security law. That is where we need to be clear.
Thank you, Chairman. Honorable Wakoli, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank the leadership of SUPKEM. I think it is on record, Chair, that just this week I asked about the matter that our ABO Chair has raised about the abduction, and to assure you that it is in our files and we are following it up as well. Number two is a very technical question to our good friends. Should religious organizations be monitored? If yes, monitored by who and in which way? Number two, in the same line, should sex doctrines be declared as part of registration documents so that it is easy for government and yourselves to keep a check or on radar what is happening in that particular line? Number two of the same question, should lifestyles of religious leaders and their followers be an issue of concern? Because some of the religious leaders live in opulence, drive top-of-the-range vehicles, while their members barely survive. And one or two questions in the same wavelength. Are there any regulatory measures against religious leaders who have been accused of financial exploitation of their congregants? What disciplinary measures have been taken? Do you as SUPKEM do a financial audit of your resources? Are the tithes and offering transparent? These are questions that are cut across the religious organizations. But today is your turn to give us your part of the story. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator. I yield the floor to the chairman and your team.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It is true, he said technical, yes, there are technical questions. Monitoring of religious institutions or organizations in the country is actually something that always goes on, but not official. Because I'm very sure different organizations do a lot of surveillance on what happens within religious institutions. I hope we are not the only ones, but it do happens. It do happens to us most regularly, and you know, we have lived to that because we do our things in line with the Registrar of Society's demands, because the Registrar of Society here is now the regulator of the societies, because most of the religious organizations are under the Societies Act. Although there are other avenues also where religious organizations have been registered as FBOs at the very community level. Some are actually registered as trusts. So I think there is also need to find a common place where the religious organizations can be anchored on, so that it is quite clear that if you are talking about a mosque, you are talking about a church, you are talking about a temple, who is the regulator of these institutions. Because putting all of them under the society, which now they'll be dealing with so many other groups, becomes a little bit tricky, because they may not really be able to do the monitoring, as has been said. And that monitoring can only be effective if the umbrella bodies actually have a mechanism and a certain responsibility shared between this other entity with them, so that there is a common arrangement where the umbrella body can have a liaisons with the entity that is in charge of the religious sector registration. That could help, because you'll be able to get help, especially when you talk about the doctrine and other things that follow you'll be able to, the government can actually benefit from the existing structures that the faith community have. To me, that is what we need to look at. So do we need to remain the registrar of societies, or is there a need to have an entity within the register of societies that handles the religious sector? So to me, I would actually propose that there should be an entity within the register of society that only deals with the faiths, so that it becomes a little bit easy and understanding on how they can last. Otherwise, if the register of society is dealing with the football, is dealing with athletics, is dealing with the wherever, so you'll find sometimes they are not even able to learn how are these entities run, because they don't have that time. So I think that needs to be done. The lifestyle audit of I wish we could also get something that we can be audited for. Unfortunately, most of our preachers happen to be very poor, because our systems are totally different from the other faiths. Because in Christianity, someone can found his own church, and you become the preacher, you are the everything of that particular church, because the church is yours. In Muslims, you cannot establish your own mosque and now decide to be charging, doing, no, that one doesn't work on our side. On our side also, you cannot demand you cannot even ask that you pay something, give sadaqah. Sadaqah is a willing thing. So you either come, you give, or you don't give. So we don't have that kind of a practice. So that's where we also have a collision in terms of whether they need to be audited. But if in a situation where it is necessary, then it is necessary to always do that audit, the lifestyle audit of those in places of leadership in the religious sector. Because just like every other sector, in this country we have a very bad culture, unfortunately, where people take advantage of the places that have been put in place. Somebody wants to exploit whatever little resource that is available in a place that he has been put, either by he has found himself in, or people have entrusted him or her to be in that position. So they want to find out atakula nini katika ile nafasi ambaye amewekwa. So it's unfortunately it's a very sad issue. And as a council, of course, we do the audit. SUPKEM is a society with a membership, is a corporate membership organization. Our members are mosques, madrasas, and currently community-based organizations that are 100% Muslim, Islamic, serving the Muslim communities. So most of us, we are actually not members by virtue of ourselves. We are members because we were seconded by other entities that are members of the council. Because of the demands of the registrar of society and how it is governed, of course we do regular audits of our accounts, and of course we are held to account by our membership through the annual general meeting. So when we have the annual general meetings, our statements of accounts are going to be read, and if there are questions, members will hold us to account. And normally what happens when you are elected, it means that the opposite will happen. You'll also be de-whipped, you can be rejected, you can be thrown out. So in a process like this one, there are a number of things that has to be done. So we do that, and all organizations that are registered by the Register Society, majority of them do, all those which are functioning, they do the annual returns, and in the annual returns, they also do the AGMs, which they must present the audited accounts. But of course, we need to look beyond the audit accounts, because there are other things that are never audited. You never know. I am not sure whether I have exhausted your question. Yeah.
Yes,
you can have something.
Yes. Maybe Chair, yes, because it's an opportunity. From the questions we are hearing, many people do not understand the Muslims and Islam. Unlike other faiths, you find majority, I think 95% of the imams in this country are not paid. Right? They give service to the community. So when it comes to audit, you audit somebody what if he's in control of that. Two, in every mosque, there are committees who normally appoint the imam. The other issue, the most important thing is, unlike other faiths, for example, Sheikh Abdul Qadir is a religious leader. Today he's in Nairobi, he can go to China, go to the member and start lecturing. The mosque does not belong to anybody. He goes to Mombasa, goes to Lamu, he goes to Garissa. He's a religious leader recognized. So nobody can prevent him. Nobody can say, this is my mosque. Unlike other faiths where people have their own maybe church or institution. But ours, once you are religious leaders and you have the knowledge, today he flies to Mandera, Dhuhr prayer, he talks to the imam, he says, I want to give a speech. He's welcome by everybody. And the offering normally offered in mosque is when there is something. Maybe they want to build the mosque, repair the mosque, they will ask the congregants, can we contribute? We want to buy maybe the carpet. It is done there. But there is no other money that goes to, unlike, sometimes when people are saying that the mosque is used as a radicalization center. It's an open place. People who are coming to pray there are from different, they're security agents, they're businessmen, there's everybody. It's open when you go to the mosque. And that's why Jamia Mosque had to open to the non-Muslim. Come and see what is inside the mosque. We have nothing. It is a hall, even no sitting. It's the carpet. So I think that is what we need to understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator, you had something to add?
Oh, thank you. I think I like the levels of organization. Among the Kenyan religious organizations, we have seen vicious fights in terms of managing resources, doctrinal engagements, and at times political divisions. How have you been able to navigate and ensure that the society, the Muslim community is on track against extremism and against other vices that are turbulent at the current times? Thank you.
Chair? Yes.
Yeah, we equally have also our share of challenges, despite the unity and the sense of organization. But what we do is our management system for a long time was actually traditional system, and I think that is why we have been able to walk this journey. One of the things that the biggest challenge we are facing, humanity is facing today, is the emergence of modernity, things that are being done in the name of modernity, which brings everybody else at the same par and raising questions and kind of stuff. So I think what have saved us quite a lot is being some kind of traditional entity that have traditional systems that are actually working. And I think there is nothing bad being traditional. It helps in a way to contain and sometimes and to direct the community on how they need to coexist with other people. On matters of dealing with radicalization, I mentioned it before, that with the emergence of extremism and violent extremism and terrorism, a lot of investments has been made by Kenya and the friends of Kenya in this country. There have been lots of monies from Western countries, the US and other countries that have been able to help in terms of giving us platforms in where we train our imams and train our madrasa teachers, discuss about the madrasa text, because actually the Duksi system of education, and I think we also even have a curriculum now, which was most recently passed by the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development and adopted by the Ministry of Education. So there are a number of things that has happened thanks to the war on terrorism, because the resources were being able to be mobilized and help. We have done a lot of trainings. We have done a lot of trainings of young people, giving them opportunities just to learn how things work. And I remember some few years ago, we did some interesting workshops at the coast where we were working with the Ministry of Interior, especially registration of persons, because the biggest problem the Muslims were facing is issuance of identity cards, and that makes them to feel not part of the citizenry. So what we did that time, we noted that while there are some issues, some facts about that they have been denied, but there is also some levels of ignorance on how to process that document. Because people can make quick judgment and say, apa sita pata. So what we did that time, we just mobilized young people in every county and then invite the registrar of persons. So they come and educate them, take them through to understand how do you require to get an ID card, for example. So they have all the time to ask questions, so I need this, I need that. So, and in that process, it helped people to understand, oh, okay, I'm the one who was wrong. I wish I could have done this, I could have gotten my ID. So such kind of conversations makes people to open up their minds and also to have that feeling that it's not that I'm not actually being wanted, I did not do it right. And then people, some people have been able to benefited and they have changed their perception. So those are some of the things that we are able to do outside there to try and see that we, let me say, we become Kenyans.
Thank you, Chairman. I yield the floor to Vice Chair Shakira.
Thank you, Chair. I first want to thank the SUPKEM for their very elaborated reports and the way they have tackled all the questions. We really appreciate. Thank you so much. You have given us a wealth of experience and you have really opened us up. Chair, mine was, it's just one or two questions regarding the religious training. I know that we don't have curricula in schools of our religion, and maybe that has really prompted to our religious teachers not to be paid. Yeah. So what is it that, do you think there should be a training to standardize the religion, and who should develop the curricula which will harmonize and suit the diversity of all the religious groups? Yeah. And does Kenya need a legislation to regulate the obligate clerics? Because even if our sheikhs and imams, should they be trained to what level for them to qualify to be a sheikh or to be an imam? Or is it a calling? Like we had other group the other day, they told us it's a calling. Yeah. So do you really need any certain qualification for one to qualify to be a religious leader? And last is, if in your view, what is really the cause of religious extremist? What would somebody be prompted to be an extremist? I know you have come up with one reason saying that because of the discrimination of our religion, people would take advantage of that and say that, oh, you see the way you're discriminated by your country, by your government. But what are really the issues which would make somebody to become an extremist in religion? Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, your team.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for this opportunity to discuss this. The Honorable Vice Chair comes from a very traditional home of knowledge, of Islamic knowledge in this country. And she knows that the scholars who went through Lamu, Riyadh Mosque to be specific, throughout these days and in Central Africa, are people who are highly trained. But if you ask them today to give you a certificate, they don't have. But the level of knowledge, you can't even compare them with our current generation of papers. People who can actually give so many papers, but in terms they lack content, to justify. And to us as a community, we find a lot of challenges in actually deliberating on the qualification of a religious leader. Again, in this issue of leader, I think we also need to differentiate, because the way we are organized in a different way. We have Muslim scholars or imams or madrasa teachers. And we have those of us in leadership, but we are not imams, we are not madrasa teachers. So we fall under the same category, but with different roles. So when you come to specifically now the area of those now who are actually entrusted to discharge the duties of educating the Muslim community, qualifications will not be the right thing to do. There are ways of how the community evaluate those who qualify to offer the services in a mosque. Either to be the imams, to be the madrasa teacher. There are certain criteria exactly of who becomes. I'll leave that one also, the imam, to talk about it. Standardization of the curriculum is really a very, very difficult thing to do with our society. Because when we were talking about this curriculum, the curriculum of madrasas, we have a lot of problems. Because if you get a scholar who went to Al-Azhar University in Cairo, and he opens a madrasa, he will use what he learned in that institution. You get a teacher who went to Riyadh in Lamu, he will use the Lamu curriculum, which is carrying in his mind. That's actually it's not written. He just knows this is what we do in this. That is what he came up with. Likewise, other institutions that they come up. So we have a very rich kind of scenario where people are actually teaching using the curriculums of the institutions that they went to study. And that's why we have this very rich tradition of different people doing different things in mosques, in madrasas, and other places of faith. So we also find that standardization is a big problem because the challenges we have had, even the uptake of the madrasa curriculum has been very slow because of that. The people are very uncomfortable with the standardization. They want to keep the teachings of their grandfathers, their great-grandfathers, intact without interference and because everyone else feels maybe this one is shallow. We need a more deeper knowledge than what we see here. Because we want to standardize, that is what it is. Then the other challenge, and that is the bigger challenge, is that we talk about the curriculum, but there is no institution providing the training of those teachers to use the curriculum. So it's one thing to have the curriculum, but it is the other to implement that particular curriculum. And that is where the problem is, because we made that curriculum with KICD may be there for ages, but it may never be used, because the teachers that are actually in place are the teachers that have gone through, majority of them have gone through our traditional system, and now they don't even understand how to organize, how to teach in an organized manner, in a curricular manner. So those are some of the issues that we have. And the issue of qualification, I again leave the Imam to talk about it briefly.
Okay, through the chair. We have the traditional education system. A good example would be the academy in Riyadh, whereby so many old scholars, people who are in their 50s maybe or so, study there, and not only in Kenya, but all over, as far as Comoros and so on and so forth, Tanzania, even Congo and so on and so forth. People, they used to come to Riyadh, and others used to go to Zanzibar and so on and so forth. So that is the traditional system of education. Then you have the current system of education, whereby students went outside to study, whether in the Gulf state or even in the neighboring Sudan and so on and so forth. Then they came, and then there's these clashes of educational system. But of late, we have gone through the phases of unifying the curriculum, the madrasa curriculum. In fact, it passed through all the system last year, after about 7 years of taking views all over the country and so on and so forth. So we are in the process of standardizing the madrasa curriculum, but it's a journey. It's a long journey and tedious and so on and so forth. But what we're saying is, as a short-term remedial, is that let every faith regulate itself, because every faith is unique. We have our own systems of controls and check, and let every faith regulate itself. We'll put all the guidelines in place, and then the ones who don't qualify, irrespective if they have the papers or not, but they can go through a system of interviews and so on and so forth, and then monitoring and evaluation. It can be done by the same regulatory body. My humble suggestion would be, we have a body like the Registrar of Society, but specifically regulating religious bodies. And all the religious bodies should be inside that body. Then if you have an application from a Muslim or Islamic institution, then that department will take care of that. And the Catholic and the Protestant and SDAs and so on and so forth. So that, but it should be in a way whereby it regulates itself, just like any other organization. For example, the media is regulating itself, the lawyers are regulating themselves, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if any senator has any other thing, maybe because I think we are going to close. Senator Maina, anything? Senator Wakoli?
There was just one question the chair would have addressed. I like your in-depth of the knowledge of matters religion. The issue of whether you find, I asked about caution, because when you're dealing with the security, would you rather, when they take the cautionary measure of warning and saying, let's pose this faith or this religion or this madrasa, or would you rather, when we deal with the Shakahola, which is, how do we balance that? I had asked that question. I'm not sure I had the answer. What is the balance? How far does the security apparatus go to ensure that we do not get to where Shakahola took us?
So before I give you, I just want to ask if Senator Wakoli, you have anything else? So you can tackle all of them together.
I think she has just asked what I wanted to ask.
All right, thank you. Senator Shakila?
Mine is just to say that in as much as we have different learners from different areas of religion, I think there's importance to harmonize all the learnings and come up with a curricula which will help our children and our schools, because that will only give the opportunity for our religious leaders to be paid by the government. Because now that is one issue I remember we discussed with Sheikh Dor when he was in parliament, that our Islamic teachers are not paid because of lack of curricula. And if you can push for something like that, it will help for our Islamic teachers to be recognized by the government, because they will have a curricula whereby they will follow from nursery to primary to secondary to university, teaching our religion in that manner. Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you.
Sorry
Yes.
To pick up from,
of course.
Why I want to appreciate my desk mate, Ibrahim. 844, when we did exams, we had CRE stroke IRE. During my campaign, one of the leadership of the Muslims in Bungoma asked me to incorporate in my message rallying the Muslim families, parents, children to enroll into the formal education and therefore be able to partake of the national cake. I am a scholar of philosophy and religious education. I have taught religious education. In my course of that, we learned Muslim or Islamic, let me be particular. And therefore, there is room for the Muslims who have pursued education and religious education in that context to be employed formally by government. And if sent in public institutions where Muslims are there and the children want to pursue Islamic religion, then they can do it, but based on the Kenyan curriculum. Matters of faith, they can now pursue it outside school because now you have the mosques and the leadership, sheikhs and that, so that all of us as a Kenyan population partake of our rightful share. Thank you, Chair.
Maybe Chairman, I yield the floor. You make your comment on what the senators have said, and then that will be also, you can do closing remarks because we're going to finish now.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and members. Let me respond to the question by Honorable Senator Maina on the cautionary measures. I think it's actually a very good way of addressing this problem if the state adheres to that. Because instead of firefighting, you better stop fire in the first place. So when you have identified that there is a possibility that something is not right in this place, there should be a measure. And sometimes government keeps a lot of information to itself, failing or not understanding how to pass this information to the communities that can actually resolve. I can share with you, Mheshimiwa, that even, you can even imagine, even in the city center here, where we have a mosque like Pomwani, up to today, the government has not been able to resolve even the matter of leadership in the mosque. It has become a vicious cycle that it will never end. You know, today this group is there, tomorrow another thing is there, tomorrow the fighting is going on. Those things do happen. And why? Because when government tries to respond to issues, they actually want to go directly to their problem, but not understanding the dynamics, what informs that, what makes that problem to be the problem. And I think it is important that the government recognizes the role that can be effectively played by the umbrella bodies. Because issues that are religious in nature, it's very, very difficult to understand unless you subscribe to that particular faith. So it is easier that the first stage that is to be done is recognize those umbrella bodies. Then the government can give those umbrella bodies a responsibility of addressing some of those internal matters. Because most of the things that happen at the mosque and at the church level are largely internal, which makes it very difficult for government really to step in and correct the mess there. So maybe what I can only propose is we can only get into the cautionary measures by giving a responsibility to the umbrella bodies. It becomes easier that way so that you can be able to raise an alarm and say, hey, we find certain things are not right there. Please get back to us and let us know what's going on in that particular place. That can help. On the curriculum, it is a discussion that has been going on in the country for quite a while. It is important for this committee to appreciate the fact that we have a growing population of Muslims who are trained outside this country. We are Muslim, so many of them who have gone to Al-Azhar University, who have gone to Medina University, who have gone to Sudan University, University of Africa, and other countries, including Libya and Pakistan. It's a large number of them. But what happens when they come back? Their certificates are not recognized in this country. Somebody can come with a PhD, master's, whatever paper they have, but they cannot fit into the Kenyan system. And I think it is important that we move away from this tradition of making English and Kiswahili as a way of actually deciding who a scholar is. I should be a scholar whenever I speak my mother tongue. And if I qualify to be that scholar, I should be seen as one. Not because I don't speak English and I don't speak Swahili, then now I'm being pushed at. That is a problem that we have. So many of our scholars are trained in Arabic. They are Arabic trained. But you'll find that some of them are lawyers, they have done Sharia, they have done education, they have done Hadith, but they don't fit into our system. So we need to think about, and that could only be legislation, because these people have a place and a role to do in our education system. I know sometimes I had a good friend of mine in Kenyatta University who was teaching then, and he was not a Muslim, but he was teaching Islam in the university. And many other. I also know my son was actually being taught by IRE, by a Christian lady who is not a Muslim. She's a Christian, but she has studied IRE as a subject. Okay, so what about these people who speak Arabic? They should be given that opportunity because that is their area of specialization. And that needs to be, in my view, like whatever Madam Deputy Chair have just mentioned, this is a matter of legislation. It requires some legislation to really accommodate these people who have certificates or degrees, whatever, who and qualify to have a role in their education system, than just leaving them at the periphery, and they become actually, they may actually turn to be weapons. They can be weaponized and used by people because of the frustrations they go through. So I think it is important that that is also taken into account for the purposes of giving them an opportunity as well. And finally, Chair, allow me on behalf of the team and on behalf of the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims to thank you most sincerely for this opportunity, the time that we have gotten in this place, the discussion and the questions that have been raised. We are very happy, and this shows that you are actually looking for something. In my native place where I come from, I don't want to say it in my language, but I'll just try to explain it. We say the one who is looking for the truth is not equal to the one who is trying to conceal the truth. Meaning you can actually be able to get more than what we have, because you'll be able to read between the lines what we are saying and maybe what we are not saying. And you can also have an opportunity of comparing what we have said and what others have said. And by the end of it, we expect to get the best out of this committee. So our country would actually be a safer place where when you are introduced as a religious leader, people should be safe and happy that you are around. We don't want that in future when a religious leader is introduced, people become a little bit uneasy and almost trying to find ways of how to escape from that particular venue, because the next thing that will happen, you'll be fasting to death. We don't want that to happen in our country as we watch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. The Vice Chair wanted to say something, and then I'll close.
Thank you, Chair. I have only one concern, whereby the way we are moving and the world, the way it's going, we need to do things right to prevent any circumstances in future. I would really urge you to take this seriously. It's just a food for thought. That, as you have said here, that the teachers who teaches religion, they come from different areas of their teachings, and they teach differently. It is important, like the way we do in school. A kid in Standard 1 in Lamu should be learning the same as the kid learning in Nairobi or Mandera or wherever, any other area in the country. And same should apply to religion. We need to come up with something or a curricula which will unify the teaching of Islam or Christian or any other religion, so that we avoid the radicalization, the exploitation of religion by the people who would be teaching differently, so that it does not, to avoid such Shakaholas and anything of this kind in future and their budrogos. Yeah? So please, let's think about it, come up with a curricula which will unify the teaching of all the religions in the country. If you need to sit with other religions, come and standardize it, think about it, and make sure we come up with something which will give a better teaching to our children, to modify them to become good religious leaders in future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Mr. Chairman, I want to tell you we are very grateful. In our Pokomo language from Tana River, we say when you go to a meeting, you go with one, let me just say it this way. Unaenda na akili moja. And then unatoka na akili mbili. So this has been a very good meeting because we have been enriched and we have seen your thinking and we appreciate your ideas. We are very grateful, Mr. Chairman, and our engagement does not end today. If you get new ideas that you think are good to share with us, please, you can always reach us through the clerk of the Senate. We will get that information. And we, on the other hand, if we need you, we will always get in touch with you so that in the event that we require you for other issues or clarification, you will help us. We are determined that Shakahola does not happen again. And we want to do everything and anything possible to prevent this from happening again. And we are looking at all ideas within the mandate of this committee. We will then come up with a good report that we will table it before the Senate. The Senate will debate and then amend or approve or improve it. And then we'll then go to maybe the legislative framework. So we thank you and may God bless you so much as you continue with your duties. We have a cup of tea. If you have time, I think it's not a time to pray, so we can go and have a cup of tea. Thank you, and this meeting now stands adjourned.
John, nabaki na HDMI ama?
Haina mama, usione, sio shaka. Tutapatana tu.
Tutapatana tu.
Siende. Nimebaki na 100 minutes. Hiyo ndo nataka. Kimaliza hiyo ndo naenda.
Nasikia tuko nyingine.
Basi tukufanye. Oya.
Nakusikia tu.
Sai.